Welcome to Money in Tech. We're here with Pamir Gelenbe to recap CoinSummit. So, Pamir, amazing conference.
Thank you. Thanks, Jared. Well, coming from you, that means a lot to me, and to us, I should say, as a team. Yeah, I'm still trying to process what happened, and still trying to recover from a very intense couple of days. But overall, really quite happy with the result.
So this is your second conference, or second Bitcoin conference, I should say.
That's right.
I attended your London conference last year, which was also great. But how would you kind of compare the two?
Well, I guess the space as a whole has been growing up, and it's been 9 months, I guess, since we did the London one, and 9 months is a couple of years in kind of Bitcoin dog years, if you like. So clearly, institutional interest in Bitcoin has increased, and we've seen at the conference. I think at CoinSummit we had about 85 institutional investors mostly from the Bay Area in attendance. Another 20 or 30 angel investors. So in London, we certainly didn't have that.
Right. And I was in London. I talked to a couple investors.
Yeah.
And there was a few there, but it seemed like that everywhere I looked, there was an investor at this conference.
Yeah.
Do you attribute that to the geography, or just the increase in interest in Bitcoin, or a little of both?
I would say a little both.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why we decided to do it in San Francisco was so that we would attract those investors who don't generally like to travel more than 20 miles away from their office. So whereas in Europe, we don't really have that. So geography was part of it, but I think growing interest and increasing awareness in the last 9 months is another one for sure.
There was definitely a lot more media at this as well. I'd say there was more media at this conference than any conference that I've ever attended. Do you think that just has to do with the growing interest too?
No, actually, well, yeah, I mean, growing interest for sure, but that was a deliberate decision on our part. The way we look at the conferences is we really try to achieve a number of objectives, but one of them is to add value to the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole. And I think conferences are a great way to project a positive image for Bitcoin, because people can see the entrepreneurial energy, the want to change the world attitude. Their conferences are catalytic events in a way, and having a lot of media there is a way to capture that and to hopefully also sort of tilt the hearts and minds of the members of the media who are in attendance. So deliberately, we invited quite a lot of journalists and media representatives. And we also know from some of our attendees from last time and some of our sponsors from last time that they were very appreciative that we had good members of the media there, because for them it's helpful in spreading the word. Like, for example, Lamassu, one of the primary reasons why they found our conference quite valuable, I had dinner with Zach after the conference, is that he was able to, in short, rapid bursts, do a lot of interviews and get the word out about Lamassu, and that's been their primary acquisition channel for customers.
Oh, I agree completely. And I think you nailed the formula for Bitcoin conferences. So what's next?
So we're going to do an event in London in July, CoinSummit London. So the dates are TBC, but it looks like it's going to be the 10th and 11th of July. So similar format. I think we'll go also for about 450 people. We've actually found a venue which holds as many. So we're quite excited about that. I think we'll be able to give it a slightly different flavor, because we'll have different entrepreneurs from Europe and participants from Europe. There's a lot actually happening in Europe around the Bitcoin space. As you well know, from a regulatory perspective, Europe is probably a little bit better than the US right now, because you can legally operate an exchange or pretty much any kind of Bitcoin business in continental Europe. And you can actually even get banking relationships, as we've seen with people like Kraken and others operating there. So I'm quite excited to see how the space has changed in Europe since last year. And so I expect a good turnout.
Any big changes you're going to make with this Europe conference? I noticed one thing that I heard people talking about was the startup showcase. They really enjoyed it, but they felt like everyone that was in it had already won. Any plans to make more of a competition out of the event?
So I guess the only reason why we didn't make it much of a competition was because we didn't have much budget for a prize,
right.
If I'm entirely honest this time. But I'm open to all sorts of ideas on how we can improve the startup showcase, or whatever we call it going forward. But the general idea is to give exposures to startups, so they get funded, or if they're already funded, so they get more customers or more exposure. And so the main thing I'd like to change about the startup showcase was that this time we kind of did it in a pretty quick sequence. So I think we only had the Startup Showcase announced 3 weeks before the event,
Right.
and we had about 70 entries or so. I'd love to start a little bit earlier this time, maybe get more entries, increase. I mean, I think we had great quality in the Startup Showcase, but I think we can do even better for the next one in London. And there are a lot of startups in Europe and beyond, so excited about that.
So it seemed pretty flawless. Everything just flowed. Like, who helped you put this conference together?
So the conference is a husband and wife project. So my wife Bulnar and I worked on all aspects of the conference together, but we got a lot of help. So Johnny Levin, who's also the founder of Coinometrics, helped us with social media prior to the conference and during the conference as well. We also hired a PR company called The Content Factory. They also do the PR for La Massue. They're fantastic as a team. They're based in New Hampshire, so they flew over and they manage all the media relations and so on. We also got help on logistics from a company called Incredible Management, who organize fairly big trade shows. They do the Salesforce.com show in San Francisco and other shows. So we're not events people, so we didn't have all the expertise of how to run these things. So these guys were fantastic in keeping us sane before and during the event. And other than that, as you know, we had a partnership with CoinDesk, which was very helpful to get the word out about the events. Right. And Shaq, the founder, was also very helpful in connecting us with some key speakers, including Mark Andreessen.
Right. Shaq's a great guy, and I'm a big fan of CoinDesk. So what's your takeaway from all this?
A couple of things. I think one, the conference was an efficient way, I think, for the people in attendance to have 30, 40 meetings in rapid sequence and also benefit from, this is English as a second language here, but I guess the serendipity is that of sort of meeting people that you don't necessarily expect to meet. That end up maybe being quite helpful in various ways. So I think a lot of people commented on how, on the quality of attendees and the effectiveness of the event in terms of making those connections, or just catching up with people they already knew. And that really was our objective. So we wanted to create this kind of environment that people found useful, so that ultimately everybody gets an individual return on investment on their attendance, on their time and money. And so from that perspective, I think we did achieve our objectives. More generally, I'm just very positive on the industry as a whole. I mean, it's amazing. We're getting, a string of bad news over the last couple of months with Mt. Gox and whatnot, and yet we have this high energy, senior group of people there who are, planning some amazing businesses and ideas for the next 5 to 10 years. So that makes me feel generally very positive about this space in general.
Exactly, I agree completely. It seems like the worse the media portrays the Bitcoin industry, the better it does and the stronger the players perform. So after all the talks and after all the people that you spoke with at the conference, what kind of themes did you see that were really prevalent?
Altcoins are here to stay. And while it's important to still focus on Bitcoin and build a Bitcoin ecosystem, because we're far from done, it's a 10-year journey and we're just at the early part of that journey still. There's probably a need for altcoins, and Dogecoin has shown that it has the ability to capture people's hearts and minds, and also enable a number of things that Bitcoin so far hasn't been that great at enabling, particularly tipping and all sorts of casual transactions. But generally, I think there were a couple of important themes there. One is that we have to look beyond Bitcoin as a store of value, and we really have to look into Bitcoin as some sort of underlying technology that one can build on top of to power all sorts of cool ideas. I think that came across very clearly in the panel that we had with Mark Andreessen and Balaji Srinivasan from Andreessen Horowitz. It also came out in some of the other panels. So I think that's a very important theme, and there are all sorts of interesting ideas like Torcoin or AppCoin and so on that people are talking about. The second important theme was that the days of kind of cold storage may be over, at least cold storage as we've, the days of trusting somebody as a black box to store your coins for you, maybe behind us. I think we're now looking at things like multi-sig, which give people more transparency and more control over their money.
Right.
And so I think there's a consensus in the industry that we need to move towards those types of security solutions.
Right. Or buy your own black box.
Or buy your own black box. Exactly right. Exactly right.
Were there any specific panels that you really focused on?
The first panel on day 2 was really interesting. Is Bitcoin a flash in the pan? So we had Susan Athey, who's a professor at Stanford, who's the recipient of the John Bates Clark Medal, which has been awarded to 17 economists, of which 11 went on to get a Nobel Prize. Right. And it's widely recognized as, and it goes to economists who are under 40 of age, And it's pretty much the second most prestigious award that an economist can receive after the Nobel Prize. So it's a major deal, and it's great to have someone like Susan in the Bitcoin space, really focusing on it. So we had Susan, we had Andreas Antonopoulos, who doesn't need an introduction in this space, as well as Johnny Levin, who's the founder of Coinometrics, who's also a graduate student at Oxford and who's spending all his time also focusing on Bitcoin. So one of the interesting things there was that someone like Susan, who is a very serious economist, without blinking, predicted that Bitcoin would probably get to about $2,000 by the end of the year. So, while I'm not focused on the price, I think it's interesting to hear, I know some people are much more bullish, but it was interesting to hear that coming from her.
I think Wences is a little more bullish than that. What did he say?
So I caught up with Wences today, actually, post-conference, and he has a very firm view that Bitcoin is probably going to get to about $1 million a coin within 5 to 10 years. And his view is that it's going to get to about $30,000 by the end of this year.
Wow. I've heard you talk about altcoins, and you say that altcoins are here to stay. Does that mean that you believe we're going to have, 10 or 20 altcoins? I mean, are we going to have Dogecoin and Catcoin and all this?
Yeah, I mean, look, one thing we learned from the failure of communism is that people want choice.
Right.
And I think it's just I don't know what it is in human nature, but if we can have choice, we'll take it. And somehow, probably different coins will appeal to different people. And we're already seeing it now where, some coins might be better at certain things. Dogecoin is better at small transactions and tipping. Zero coin might be better at privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And
one way to put it.
That's one way to put it, yeah. And the list goes on, right?
Right.
So I think, human nature wants diversity and choice, and that's what all these old coins are providing.
Any thoughts on bringing more traditional finance leaders to the next conference? The CTO for Citibank or something.
Yeah. That's definitely going to happen, and that's actually the great point you're raising. Thing is, my view is I always try to sail with the wind behind me. So when we did the London one last time, we did it in Canary Wharf, right in the heart of the financial district, right? And I thought that all these people would just flock to the conference, and guess what? Nobody showed up. and so we only had, it was great. The people we had were great, but we didn't really have anybody from the financial establishment, if you like. And that just taught me that I guess it was too early for those people to be interested.
Right.
And I still think if you took a poll on Wall Street, I think you'd find that 80% would be negative about cryptocurrency still at this point. Maybe 70%, 80%.
I think it's funny when you look at Wall Street, you'd ask how many are negative on it and then how many would invest in it.
Yeah, it's probably different.
They're like, this is stupid, but I might make 100x return, so I'm going to throw 100 grand at it.
Again, institutionally, they're negative, but personally, they're probably positive, at least some of them. But so I guess my long answer to your question is it's definitely going to happen that Citibank CTO is going to show up one day, but I don't want to force it.
Right.
I want he or she to come out of their own desire to be part of this. And it's like a natural process. We actually had a lot of people from large companies wanting to come. It was interesting because they expressed interest because our process was request an invite, and then you get an email if you're approved saying go get your ticket.
Right.
And we had quite a few people from those big companies requesting invites, but then not following through on getting a ticket. And I suspect that's because they didn't get corporate approval.
Right.
And they weren't like the most senior people, but they were like, I don't know, like they were execs in those companies. And so that's why I'm saying I think it's still a little bit early for those institutions, for those companies to kind of institutionally say, yeah, this is something we want to spend our money on. But give it a year or two, and
So now that it's all over, what was CoinSummit?
CoinSummit is the TED of Bitcoin. For us, it's really about quality, not quantity. So we aim to bring together in an intimate setting the leaders in the cryptocurrency space and people who are maybe sitting slightly on the fence also, that we can all convert into becoming believers in cryptocurrency. But generally, I see it as 2 days of high intensity, high quality focused networking, idea exchange, and a place where hopefully you make lasting connections, where deals happen, and where new ideas are initiated.
Thank you, Pamir, for putting on such a great conference.
Hey, thanks, Jared, for the awesome coverage and for being a media partner.
For more information on CoinSummit, check out coinsumm.it. And to see the over 20 interviews that we filmed at CoinSummit, go to moneyandtech.com.